Portland Trail Blazers' very own fan and biggest critic is back to criticize again, because boy do they keep giving me every reason possible to re-emphasize that they are entirely incompetent. They just did it again today, the 20th of June, 2023. You know, one of my favorite things to do at this point this year. At this point, I've really gotten to a point where I became basically your own low-budget Bill Simmons. That's how he got his notoriety, was he was a very vocal critic online and in the sphere against his own Boston Celtics team. Let me get to the point. I want to do a really quick recap just over the last couple of years, because it would take me way too fucking long to go through everything the last 5 years or even 8 years of this team's track record, proving how incompetent and stupid the entire team is, from ownership all the way fucking down through the front office and beyond. Development staff, training staff, holy shit. Because of how much there is, we're just going to cover these last 2 seasons, starting with 2 seasons ago. We traded both CJ McCollum and Norman Powell, aka Nopo. We traded both of them away. Why? Not because we were trying to retool, or they were both undersized guards playing sometimes out of position that just simply weren't moving the needle for the team or helping us. You know, the CJ McCollum, Damian Lillard experiment wasn't working. All the typical things and reasonings that everybody uses, it was none of them. The only reason, and they were incredibly vocal about this, was because together their contracts were worth $180 million. And that was because, hey, they're trying to get underneath the luxury tax, because if they kept them on that year, they would have owed a pretty big amount in luxury tax. So what did they do? They traded them away so they didn't have to pay the luxury tax. Now, if I recall correctly, there's like a 2-year term, a 2-year limit, I think, of paying into what would be the luxury tax without actually having to pay the luxury tax before they officially make you start paying it. And it was that off season, 2 seasons ago, that they were like, okay, or maybe it was season before last, and maybe it was just technically 1 season ago, I guess, depending on how you want to look at it. Either way, they had mentioned that they were going to officially owe the luxury tax, and they felt it was way too big of a price to pay, so they traded both of them away, because that got them just underneath the luxury tax, so they no longer, that offseason, would owe the luxury tax payment, because they were over the luxury tax for long enough that they would have had to pay it that year, because again, there was some weird thing with 2 years with the luxury tax. Don't know why, don't know what it is, but according to the team, that would have started that year if they hadn't traded them, so they did. Now you might think, okay, well that's reasonable, that seems, I guess, okay, and a decent enough reason. Fair. And you would be not necessarily wrong, but that's just surface value, because just the slightest little bit later, they re-signed Ant, that is Anthony Simons, to a $100 million contract, and Yusuf Nurkic to an $80 million contract, aka 2 contracts totaling, wait for it, $180 million. Immediately after they traded away 2 contracts worth $180 million together, they immediately re-signed 2 more players to exactly the same price tag together, proving further incompetency. It just doesn't make any sense. The second thing is the Jeremiah Grant trade. Believe it or not, yeah, on the surface, especially when it first happened, it made total sense. To a lot of people, they're missing the entire reason why it's incompetency and why it was a suicidal move. Well, it's because of the fact that if they're so desperate to never pay the luxury tax, how in the fuck are you gonna pay Jeremiah Grant his fucking contract? He's 28 years old. He's gonna be for most of next season. And with 28-year-olds, there's a reason why it's their contract year at 27, 28, and why they play the best season statistically of their careers by far. Why is it? Because it's their contract year, and they've literally just hit their prime, or peak of their prime. He's going to command a lot of money this year. And he's an unrestricted free agent, not a restricted free agent, aka he doesn't have a player clause and doesn't obviously have a team clause, which means anybody can sign him. Technically, I believe we acquired the bird rights in the trade with Detroit, because he spent the full season with us. I believe that means that officially we now have his bird rights. So we can technically re-sign him for the full max if we wanted to, or whatever his maximum value is. So whatever other teams are offering, we could technically offer, say, $1 million more than that to him and sign him for the most. I simply don't see that happening here in Portland. One, we don't have the money or cap space for that at all, especially if we're trying to acquire, retool around Dame and acquire yet another superstar and or really high quality veteran contracts, especially with the new rules of the CBA that are going into effect this off season and thus this next season. And being a small market that's really stingy with the money, clearly, especially now, in what universe do you think that our team, I know they're stupid, and it would be really stupid to sign him to a full max contract, or anywhere near what he's going to be worth, which I guarantee we're going to see Jeremiah Grant, or who he ends up with. He's going to be signing, at the very minimum, a 4-year $100 million, but I guarantee he's probably going to be signing a 4-year $120 to $140 million dollar contract. And I'd say it's deserved. It makes sense. But that's also why it's pretty much inevitable. That's his value right now. So that's reason 2. That was a suicidal move to trade for him for effectively what is a 1-year rental. It's fine, though, if you let him walk. I don't think they're going to necessarily let him walk, but I'm kind of scared that if he does decide to be loyal to the soil and decide, I like my teammates here, and you know what? It is technically my hometown. Fuck it. I'll stay. Okay. If he does that, though, we're probably still paying him way too much. Like, more than this team can afford. And then you're still not retooling. And again, that goes right back to what I just came from, the point of making. Which is, again, he didn't move the needle for us, which I called when we traded for him. In multiple instances. He didn't move that needle. He had a career season. It didn't matter. We had the best roster we had since. Even statistically. Didn't matter. We still did terribly. Including when he and others were healthy. Dame had the best season of his career. Didn't matter. Ant. He was painfully streaky, and he's a fucking bonehead when it comes down to the clutch, especially making decisions. He is a freaking tunnel-visioned, boneheaded moron. And he drives me up the fucking wall. His whole situation is a fucking suicide pill. It was a terrible fucking decision to do that, especially considering how quickly the team fell in love with him, and now they want to keep him, and it's like, this is a terrible, horrible, god-awful idea. I think even signing a trade is a terrible idea. Unless maybe you're truly committing to fully blowing up the team, which means Dame, Ant, Nurk, all gotta go. But I don't see them doing that. In fact, what the team's clearly proving they're doing is they want to stick with retooling while keeping the 3rd pick, and still, as usual, like they do every single season, say, see, we did so much to change, and hey, we're gonna get better, and that means, it's because continuity, and that means we're gonna be a contender this year. You wait. And has that ever happened? No, it hasn't. This is the last of the main 3 I'm gonna cover in this relatively quick. For me, it's quick. And that is, yes, Damian Lillard's contract extension. It doesn't kick in until 2024-2025, so season after next, where we're paying him $60 million that year, and then $63 the next year. And oh yeah, Damian turns 33 on July 15th, aka he's going to be a 33-year-old player, next season. Who is literally that player that's been in the news recently, and has been for years in trade rumors and everything else, because the team was so fucking dumb to be like, yeah, we can retool around him. We'll re-sign him to a full max contract of like $250 million. That seems like a great idea. Bradley Beal. Since like 2018 or 2019. I think 2019. But that's 4 seasons, 4 years. And he had such a massive contract. And because of his injury issues, he's never bellied at the level he was at his peak. It's just, you get yourself trapped in this delusional pit of death and despair when you have front offices like the Washington Wizards Or, you know, the Portland Trailblazers when they sign their star players to those contract extensions. It's the worst fucking case scenario. Now, on the bright side, Dame just had his best season of his career. And he has a wickedly high reputation in trade value right now still. But the problem is, as I already mentioned, the team is diehard, willing to literally suicide the entire fucking franchise into the ground in value and success just to keep him and play make-believe, pretending they can retool around him and get good enough to contend. So yeah, long story short, those are the main three big issues. And though, yes, it should be relatively easy to trade Dame, the team's unwilling to give him up. And it's a toxic fucking two-way relationship. It's a codependent, toxic as fuck, abusive relationship between these two, between Dame and between the franchise. And they keep proving it throughout this entire offseason so far with the passive aggression, passing of the puck that they keep fucking doing, and indirectly basically being like, yeah, I refuse to tolerate you if you keep the pick and draft somebody with it because I want to play with an entitled teenager. And then the other side's like, well, we also don't want to keep you, but we also don't want to trade the pick, so like, suck it up, bucko. And then the other side, being Dame again, is like, well, also I'm fully committed to the team and I don't want to be traded and I want to write my career in Portland and win a championship. But I also don't want to play with a teenager. And you just spin around in circles because that's how both Dame and the fucking franchise function. They're actually agonizingly perfect for each other because they feed each other's worst traits. Now here's what they did today, June 20th, 2023. You know how the draft is 2 days from now on the 22nd on Thursday? Well, in considering their incompetency and being super fucking stupid, you could probably get an idea if you know about how, I don't know how, say, draft parties work, by the way. That usually indicates that they're intent on keeping that third pick, and they are in fact going to keep it, and that's why they have a draft party, especially that they publicly advertise to their fan base, and literally go and have a contract with a venue to be able to host that party, because, and advertise it massively to their entire fan base on their social medias. Why would they do that? Unless they're keeping that pick and they want to be like, oh, get excited, let's watch together who we're gonna pick. Is it gonna be Scoot? Is it gonna be Brandon Miller? Who is it gonna be? Is it gonna be old Sir Thompson? So one piece. The other piece is they're still trying to keep Dame. And the third thing, and it's the location of it, of course, which you could probably guess. Now, if you are familiar with the Portland, Vancouver metro area, or say the northwest quadrant of Oregon and the southwest quadrant of Washington State, you can almost immediately guess exactly what incompetency was in this instance of selecting the location for the draft party. It's in Vancouver, Washington. The draft starts at 5, probably therefore technically 5:15, 5:30. In Vancouver. You know, the literal middle of fucking rush hour. On a weekday. Technically in the summer in terms of every school is out for the summer now in the Northwest. So as a result, there's infinitely more drivers and infinitely more traffic and infinitely more demand and infinitely more commuting going on at all times of day. That makes the traffic even worse commuting over the river because there's 2 bridges and that's all we have. We have the I-5 bridge and we have the I-205 bridge. And that's it. Unless you want to go, I don't know, all the way up to fucking Rainier to cross over into Longview and then drive all the way back down again. Which, not gonna lie, might and probably would take about equal amount of time, including all the extra stoplights you're stopping at on that route, and all adding like twice as much distance actually probably to your trip. Nobody in their right or left minds in the Portland area or in Oregon in general as an Oregonian is gonna fucking dare to participate in that draft party. Now, they really want to. If you look at the post on Instagram from the Trailblazers account advertising that. It's like, I'd say 80-90% people just bitching about it, because it's like, are you fucking kidding me? Of fucking course you put it in Vancouver. In what fucking universe did you think that made fucking sense? Especially, you know, at rush hour. Like, who in the fuck is gonna go to that in Oregon? Pretty much no one. Because, what? Like, and I'm gonna test. I mean, people avoid it like the plague, and it's infinitely worse now than it ever has been. Obviously, the massive amount of growth Oregon and Washington and the areas have seen, and as the commutes get, it's brutal. And you can literally, like, where I live is pretty much a straight shot into Washington, south of Washington, via the freeways. Where I live, it can take going it's like probably 48 to 50 miles by road, and it literally you can leave at 2:45 in the afternoon, and you will be stuck in parking lot traffic and get there only about 3 hours later, because that's how much it crawls the entire time through all the freeways to try to get anywhere in other parts of Portland, let alone into Washington state. It is egregious to take 3 hours to go 50 miles when it's a straight shot. It's fucking excusable. It's that bad. So literally, it's not even a lie, because technically the party starts, the draft watch party starts at 4:30 at Big L's in Vancouver, Washington. So you gotta go from wherever the fuck you live in the Portland area. You gotta voluntarily get into the parking lot of traffic. Literally not even a stress. To say you probably, if you're smart, if it starts at 4:30, you want to get there around that time, or just before the doors open for the party. You're gonna be leaving at latest probably 1:30 in the afternoon, maybe 2. But you're more likely gonna be trying to get down there just to be sure by leaving like 12:45. For an event that starts at 4:30, because then you'll get there way too early, but at least you're across the fucking river and avoided the bottlenecks. Literally, that's pretty much how you have to strategize and do it. It's fucking terrible, unless you want to sit there for literal 3 straight hours in like a 25 to 35 mile segment of roadway for like 2 hours 45 minutes, 3.5 hours. It's the worst, most incompetent fucking decision you could make. They just added an entirely new layer and level of incompetence to the fucking list of endless incompetent decisions and proof of their incompetence that this fucking Portland Trailblazers franchise has.